All right, so now we're jumping in. Chapter 1. Chapter 1 started to talk about structure and function of the bodies. This is whenever we have our little muscle charts. That way you will probably fill these out again. So be very aware of these. I stuck them on the test. You guys, that should be easy money. That should be, hey, you got to know those bones. You should do that. I think in your book that's actually on page 3. We talk about your axial skeleton. We talk about your appendicular skeleton. Remember, what's the appendicular one? The appendages, the ones that would hang. Think about like Pinocchio, those things that would move through there. We've been talking forever about the motor neuron. Please tell me you know what that space is between the motor neuron and the muscle. It's the neuromuscular junction. I wish I had a penny for every time we've talked about that neuromuscular junction. So here's my question. If I am engaging with an athlete in a well-trained program and I am designing things effectively, efficiently, progressively, can I make that nerve impulse jump across that neuromuscular junction more efficiently and effective? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. So what does that do to the performance of my athlete? That increases performance. Which, if I have an athlete that's increasing performance, chapter 8 is going to take care of some things too. So that's a beautiful part there. Your muscle man is on page 4. We talk about actin and myosin. Actin is the thin or the thick?
Thin.
Actin is thin. Myosin is thick. What happens when they go like this? What's that called? It's a cross bridge. It's a sarcomere. What's the theory called? Sliding filament theory. See, you know all of these. Okay, so when you think about a sarcomere, when can a muscle express its greatest amount of action potential? When it's in its stretched, compressed, or resting length? Resting length. Remember, if I am already contracted, all of my actin and my myosin are already shoved together. If I am stretched, I have a hard time with any actin and myosin grabbing onto each other to make the contraction happen. Remember, this is when we talked about the cheat swing. Do you remember the cheat swing? If someone walks up to the easy curl, they unrack it, and all of a sudden they put on more weight that they can do. They're in the completely stretched position. What do they have to do to all of a sudden be able to perform that rep? The difference between here and here is what makes it manageable. Because here you're more in the resting length instead of the completely extended length. So we've got to be really, really, really aware of that. Those pictures are on page 7 in your book. Here we have, up here in this left one, this is when a muscle is stretched. This one over here on the right, that's that middle, and in the bottom, that's when a muscle is completely compressed together. So all of a sudden, we see this cool thing with the sliding filament theory. We start off in, what are those 5 steps of the sliding filament theory? We start with what?
Rest.
We start with what?
Resting.
Start at rest. Then what?
Excitation.
Excitation coupling. Then what?
Contraction.
Contract. Then recharge. Then what? Relax. Okay. All of these things happen every single time a sarcomere does its job. So you're going to need to know those phases of the sliding filament theory. Remember, it's acetylcholine that starts it. It's troponin, tropomyosin that actually bind together to make those things happen. Refer back to the notes that we drew about the giant chart. When in doubt, go back to your notes about the regression and the progression from type 2 to type 1. You have built the best charts out there. You'll be great. Okay? Now, once acetylcholine has stimulated something to happen, does it stimulate all or none of them, or just some of them?
All or none.
All or none. So you need to know about all or none. Remember, I'm going to take a picture of the board. Don't stress. Okay. After we have stimulated all or none, we officially have this thing called twitch. And this is whenever we start to see type 2 muscle fibers and type 1 muscle fibers. Give me some characteristics. And really, you guys, flip over to page 11. That table 1.2. This is a great way for you to remember the different sporting events that are more type 1 and more type 2 dominant. But let's just, guys, don't think about what you don't know. Think about what you know. All ready? I'm going to call out some sports. You tell me 1 or 2. Are you ready? To game. Distance running.
Type 1.
Very good. 100-meter dash.
Type 2.
High jump.
Type 2.
Basketball.
Type 2.
Boxing.
Type 2.
Predominant 2. Swimming more than 6 minutes. 1. Cycling. 1. Rowing.
1.
You guys, you know this. It's right there. You can make this happen. The thing is, you don't even have to study this anymore. You know the properties, you know the characteristics of the muscle fiber types. But review them with yourself. They all make sense now. We also talked about these things called proprioceptors. We talked about muscle spindles, and we talked about Golgi tendon organs. Remember, muscle spindles help you know where you are in space. They gently run the length of the muscle. They help keep you safe. So double up check on that. A few other things that we did mention briefly about the heart with atrium, ventricles, all of that, SA node, AV node. That's probably the most you need to know about the heart as far as this test. We do talk about arteries and veins. What's the job of an artery in the body? Take the blood away. Veins actually bring it back via venous return. Hey, there's something cool that happens though between the arteries and the veins. What is it? It starts with a C. Capillaries. Remember, we called it the Kappa parties. And we see all of these things where oxygen exchange, fluid exchange, interstitial fluid, all of those things come into play. So really know those things. We talk about your respiratory system. I skipped blood. Hemoglobin, red blood cells. Now, think back to something else that you already know. You already know this. Hey, what's the outside part of the bone called? Cortical bone. What's the inside called? Trabecular. Red blood cells are made in that bone marrow in that trabecular phase. So you see, we just thought that we were talking about trabecular bone over here. You guys, this comes into play with red blood cells as well. So you're golden to go with that. We start off with your trachea. It divides into a right and left. Go again. Start again. You start off with one trachea, right and left. Bronchi, and then 23 generations all the way down to where that oxygen can get in there, exchange with that carbon dioxide to be exhaled and make the magic happen. So that's a highlight of chapter 1. Now, if you'll remember, we didn't go to chapter 2 next. We went ahead and went into chapter 3 where we were talking about bioenergetics. Okay, everybody doing good? Yes? Okay, stop and ask. Okay? It starts off by talking about metabolic specificity. You guys, and this is the McKay way of saying your body will respond to whatever you ask it to. If you're going to ask your body to be better at type 1 training, it will get better at
Type 1 training.
If you ask your body to be better at plyometrics, what will it be better at? Plyometrics. So I'm jumping in and I am on page 44. We talk about the process of catabolism. What is catabolism?
Breakdown.
From where to where? Bigger molecules to smaller molecules. Yes or yes?
Yes.
Yes. Do we want muscle tissue to be catabolic?
No.
No. Do we want food that we eat to be broken down catabolically?
Yes.
Yes. Now, the next question is, what is anabolic? The buildup. Do we want muscular abilities in our body to be consistently anabolic? Yes. Now, put bioenergetics with endocrine system. If my body muscularly is primarily working out of anabolism. Tell me what 4 hormones are in play. Testosterone, growth hormone, insulin-like growth factor, and insulin, otherwise known as the anabolic chain. Do you see how when I've been telling you, I can't take away this chapter from this chapter? I can't take away. That's why this class has to be cumulative. It has to be. It's all woven together in this beautiful way. Once you know it, you can't take away from it. We actually start to talk about the 3 different systems. We talk about the phosphagen system, we talk about the glycolytic system, and the oxidative system. Again, I'm going to have you refer to the charts that we drew during class. We talked about each of those different energy systems. We talked about what the primary fuel was for each of those energy systems. We talked about the percent of effort. We talked about the duration of each one of those energy systems. We talk about ATP being about 0 to 6 seconds. We see that glycolysis in the fast glycolysis world kind of picks up at 6 seconds. Hey, the good news is power outage, my battery's not dead. So we're still going to keep rolling. Let's take 1 minute. We're going to figure out what's going on. We'll be right back.